Getting cut off by anyone hurts, but when it's a Sigma male, it hits different. They're not the type to start arguments or pick fights. Most of the time, they hold back because they know half the time the other person won't even understand, or it's just not worth wasting their energy on. That patience is what makes their silence so deceptive. You think they'll always let things slide because they rarely make a scene. But when a Sigma finally does cut you off, it's never random. It means you crossed a line that left them with no other option. And by the time you realize it, the decision's already final. No warnings, no speeches, just distance. That's what makes it so unsettling. You assumed their calm meant unlimited tolerance, but it never did. They were just waiting, watching, and giving you space to show who you really are. And once you proved you couldn't be trusted with that patience, the switch flipped. And the same person who never bothered you with arguments is suddenly gone for good. Here are 8 reasons Sigma males cut you off, and why you never see it coming until it's done. 1. Manipulation and deceit. If there's one thing that guarantees a Sigma will cut you off, it's manipulation. He may stay calm on the surface, but that doesn't mean he misses what's going on. He notices the half-truths, the little setups, the guilt trips designed to get him to move a certain way. And the whole time, while you think you're pulling strings, he's already seeing the pattern. What catches most people off guard is how quietly Sigma males deal with it. They don't usually call it out because they know arguing with someone who twists things won't fix anything. Instead, they let it play out long enough to confirm what they already suspected. And once they're sure, they don't stick around to play defense. They simply cut the connection and move on. That's why it feels so sudden. Manipulators expect confrontation, excuses, maybe even a second chance to explain themselves. But Sigmas don't hand out that kind of stage. They don't give you the chance to rewrite the story. They leave without speeches or warnings, and that's what makes it sting. You don't even realize the game is over until you're standing alone. For a Sigma, it's simple. Once deceit enters the picture, trust is dead. And once trust is dead, so is the relationship, no matter who you are. 2. Endless illogical arguing. Nothing drains a Sigma faster than being dragged into arguments that go nowhere. He's not afraid of debate. In fact, he enjoys honest discussions where ideas are tested. But when every conversation turns into a loop of contradictions, emotional outbursts, or talking in circles, that's when he checks out. It's not about wanting to be right all the time. For Sigmas, logic matters. If the other person ignores facts, twists words, or argues just to argue, it feels like a trap designed to waste energy. And once they sense that, they stop engaging. At first, he'll hold back. He'll nod, keep quiet, maybe let the other person vent. But over time, endless illogical arguing makes him see the truth. This isn't about finding answers. It's about control, noise, or feeding an ego. That realization kills any desire to keep the connection alive. The irony is, most people think they won the argument when a Sigma goes silent. What they don't realize is that silence is the beginning of the end. He's already pulling away. Because for him, it's not about proving a point. It's about protecting his peace. And once his peace is gone, you're next. 3. Broken promises and unreliability. Everyone forgets or slips up once in a while. Life happens, and Sigma males aren't unreasonable about that. What gets to them is when it turns into a pattern. When someone keeps making promises and never follows through, it stops looking like bad timing. It starts looking like a character flaw. For a Sigma, promises aren't throwaway words. They're small signs of respect. If you say you'll be somewhere and you're not, if you commit to something and keep bailing, it shows them your word doesn't carry much weight. And once that thought sets in, their trust begins to fade. The difference is, Sigma males rarely call it out. They're not the type to nag or demand explanations. They just take note quietly. And over time, you'll feel it. The texts slow down, the plans disappear, and eventually, the whole connection just stops. That's what most people don't realize. Sigmas may be patient, but that patience has limits. They'll forgive mistakes, but they won't waste energy on someone who can't be counted on. Because in their world, if you can't show reliability in the small things, you'll never show up when it matters most. And once that trust is gone, so are they. 4. Repeated boundary violations. Psychologists often point out that people test boundaries not to be cruel, but to see how much they can get away with. And that's exactly why Sigma males run into problems. Because he doesn't react right away, people assume he doesn't have limits. They mistake his calm silence for a green light. At first, he lets things slide. Not because he's weak, but because he knows blowing up over every little issue only creates noise. He'd rather hold back and see if the other person self-corrects. But when the same line keeps getting crossed, the private space ignored, the respect chipped away, the small harmless pushes that never stop, that patience slowly drains. What most people don't realize is that a Sigma keeps score quietly. He doesn't warn you where the last straw is, because if you cared about the relationship, you'd have noticed the earlier signs. So when he finally cuts someone off, it always feels sudden. But to him, it's not sudden at all. It's the final step after a long pattern he can no longer ignore. And here's the part that unsettles people most. You'll never know exactly which boundary ended it. He won't spell it out, and he won't give you the satisfaction of one last fight. All you're left with is silence, and the realization that you pushed too far without even realizing it. 5. Intellectual disrespect or gaslighting. Studies show that people feel the deepest anger not when they're ignored, but when their reality is dismissed. That's why gaslighting or intellectual disrespect is a fast track to losing a Sigma male. He doesn't mind disagreement. He doesn't even mind being proven wrong. What he can't stand is when someone twists logic, mocks his perspective, or tries to make him question what he knows to be true. For a Sigma, the mind is sacred ground. He values sharp thinking and honest dialogue. So when someone tries to downplay his intelligence, manipulate his perception, or brush off valid points with arrogance, it feels like a direct attack. Not on his ego, but on truth itself. At first, he'll test if it's accidental. Maybe the other person is stressed, defensive, or unaware. But when it turns into a pattern, when facts get buried under denial, or when gaslighting becomes the default defense, he knows exactly what's happening. And at that moment, he disengages completely. You can't manipulate someone who already sees the strings being pulled. And once a Sigma senses that game, he won't argue about it. He won't correct you. He'll just cut you off. Because to him, if respect for truth is missing, there's nothing left to build on. 6. Repeated laziness and sloppiness. Here's an overlooked fact. People who consistently show laziness create more stress for those around them than people who openly fail. That's why Sigma males quietly distance themselves from anyone who refuses to pull their weight. It's not about expecting perfection. They don't demand you grind every second of your life. But they notice when someone always chooses the shortcut, when they put in the bare minimum, or when carelessness becomes the default. Over time, that attitude drains them more than it drains you. But why? Because laziness spreads, workloads shift, standards drop, and suddenly everyone is carrying the weight of one person's apathy. A Sigma refuses to be part of that cycle. He'd rather distance himself than be dragged into mediocrity by association. If you're close to him, he won't turn away instantly. In fact, he'll often try to push you forward. He'll remind you of your strengths, encourage you to get moving, maybe even carry a bit of the load to show you it can be done. But here's the thing. He keeps track. And when weeks turn into months with no real change, he stops investing. 7. Constant emotional drama. Drama works like secondhand smoke. You don't have to light it yourself to feel sick. Just standing near it is enough. And that's why Sigma males slowly pull back when someone's life turns into a non-stop storm. He doesn't mind emotion. He's not turned off by people being real. What pushes him away is when chaos becomes the default setting. Every conversation turns into a meltdown. Every small problem gets blown out of proportion, and peace never lasts longer than a day. That's when he knows the cost of staying close is higher than the connection itself. At first, he'll listen, he'll give advice, maybe even step in to calm the fire. But after a while, he realizes something important. This isn't a bad moment, it's a cycle. And cycles don't break unless the person wants them to. That's when his silence shows up. Not the angry kind, but the protective kind. He stops engaging in the fights, he stops feeding the chaos, and eventually, he stops showing up where the drama never ends. What makes this sting is how quietly it happens. There's no explosion, no speech, no final argument. Just a shift. One day he was there, and now he's not. And deep down, the person causing the storms always knows why. And that's when they step away. Not out of anger, but out of self-respect. Because if you keep wasting your own time, eventually you'll waste theirs too. And for a Sigma, that's the one thing that can't be forgiven. 8. Wasting their time with no growth. Time is the one thing you never get back, and Sigma males treat it like currency. They don't need you to be successful, rich, or chasing huge goals. But they do need to feel like the connection is moving somewhere, even in small ways. When every conversation circles back to the same complaints, the same excuses, or the same mistakes, it wears them down. It's not failure that bothers them. Failure at least comes with lessons. What really gets to them is stagnation, when nothing changes, no matter how much time passes. Instead of endless pep talks, they start watching how you actually move. Are you making small adjustments, or are you still talking about the same problem you swore you'd fix months ago? That's the moment it clicks for them. You're not stuck because of obstacles. You're stuck because staying the same is easier. And from that point on, your weight in their life isn't the same. You've proven something different than the image you once showed. Respect turns into distance, and importance turns into background noise. From that moment on, you're not trusted the way you once were.